There we go. All right, good morning, everyone. Please note that we are recording this session, so if you would like to not be recorded, you can just turn your camera off. My name is Heather Satrom, and I teach in ELAP, English Language for Academic Purposes, at Montgomery College at the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus. I am so happy to welcome you all to From MC to Med School. We are so excited to have Dr. Stephanie Baker with us, an MC alum from the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus as well. I know, Dr. Baker, that you have many responsibilities and limited time, and that you are zooming in from Los Angeles today. We are so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much. I'd like to also say thank you to my co-teacher, Professor David Lott, who is here today, and the students in our learning community class, Writing and Reading 980 class in ELAP, for being here and for preparing such wonderful questions for our speaker. You guys did a great job. I understand that you are in the Writing Center right now, and that you can see us and hear us, but that you cannot use your microphones. So I have questions from you, which I will read out loud at one point. But you also are all welcome to type questions into the chat at any point, and at the end I will go through those questions and ask some of them. I'd also like to thank other students for being here today. I see some of my former students and some student leaders. Hello, Fennett, so nice to have you here with us. And welcome to anyone who's coming from the Montgomery College community or elsewhere. We're so happy to have you with us today. Let's see here. So I'm going to begin. I will read Dr. Baker's biography. Then I will invite Dr. Baker to speak for about 10 minutes, and then I'll ask some pre-written questions from the students. And then if we still have time, we'll open it up to additional questions. If at any point you have difficulty hearing me, please put a little note in the chat and I will try to adjust volume, etc. All right, so Dr. Stephanie Baker grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, yay, in a Latino immigrant family and a single parent household. Her childhood experiences exposed her to health disparities in low-income communities, including the Latino immigrant community. This led her to dream of becoming a community doctor working with low-income immigrant communities. Baker is bilingual and bicultural, having spent part of her childhood in her mother's home country of Guatemala. Dr. Baker attended Montgomery College from 2008 to 2010. She earned a master's degree in biology at UMBC and a master's degree in medical sciences at Loma Linda University. Wow. After a long journey and struggles to overcome a learning disability, Dr. Baker began medical school at Loma Linda University School of Medicine. Dr. Baker is now a family medicine resident at Harbor UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles, where she works with low-income and immigrant communities. Dr. Baker will share the story of her educational journey with MC students and explain how her experience of growing up between cultures led her to a fulfilling career in medicine. Thank you so much. I'm going to give the floor to you, Dr. Baker.
Good morning. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I really loved my experience at Montgomery College. I recognize where you guys are sitting. I definitely study there sometimes, or I see the library stairs and everything. So I'm really excited to be here. So my plan today is to talk about three major things. We're going to start with my journey. And then we're going to talk about going between cultures, and then my mission to serve underserved communities. So first of all, I'm going to start with my Montgomery College experience. So when I graduated from high school, money was limited. And so when one of the best options I had was to start college at a community college. And I was very lucky to be from Montgomery County. And so I enrolled into Montgomery College. Where we're very lucky that Montgomery College is an amazing college. It's one of the best colleges in the country. When I enrolled, it was in top 20. I don't know where it is right now, but that's really good. And so it gave me all the bases and the foundations I needed to enroll at UMBC and then to be able to apply to medical school later on. So basically, big takeaway from this is going to community college does not mean that your career aspects are limited, and that it's a great foundation for any journey, and that the possibilities are endless. Another fun fact, I was recently working with a medical student who also started off at community colleges, and now she's planning on becoming an OB. So some of us do start at community colleges. All right, so a little bit about some of the things is what are some of the obstacles I faced during my whole journey. So some of the obstacles I faced were some financial, I had learning disabilities. I didn't always know what the process was, how to apply for things, what programs were available for me. And so maneuvering around some of those things was very difficult, especially when I had a lot of people telling me that I was never going to get into medical school. And even during medical school, telling me I wasn't smart enough to finish. And so something that's really important to remember is, regardless of what obstacles you may be facing, feel free to dream big and just come up with a good plan. And doesn't matter what people are telling you, all the voices saying, no, you can't do this. If you have a good plan, and no matter what the obstacles is, you can reach your dreams. It might take you a little bit longer, but you can still reach your dreams. So despite all of these obstacles, why am I a doctor now? First of all, I got a lot of help. For me, I'm a Christian, and now I had a lot of help from a lot of different people. And then I also am a Christian, and so I have a strong belief in God. And one of the things that really helped me out the most was is believing that God had a plan for me, and that if he really wanted me to be a doctor, he would make it possible, no matter how impossible the situation seemed. And then, I don't know if you guys know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, in my situation, it took 2 villages to raise a doctor or get that MD. So I had my village in Maryland, and I had my village here in California, where there were so many people involved in giving me advice and helping me with work. And teaching me, reading through my essays, teaching me how to study. So I got a lot of help. And so without these people, with all the help I had, I wouldn't be here where I am today. Also, there were a lot of times where I really wanted to give up. And I remember having days where the voices of people telling me I would never get into medical school, the voices telling me that I wasn't smart enough, that I should quit medical school, studying 18 hours plus a day and still failing exams, made me really want to quit. And one of my darkest times, I remembered my why. And my why is it was my love and desire for working with underserved communities, and being a Latina and having exposed to a lot of the different challenges Latino immigrants face. I knew that I really wanted to be one of the doctors that really helped and connected with the population, because we have shared experiences. And that was my why. So I stuck with my why. I remember my why. And that's what helped with a lot of the resiliency, the perseverance. So basically, what does this mean to you guys is you guys may have a lot of obstacles, and it doesn't matter what obstacles you have. You need to find what gives you the strength. You need to surround yourself by people that will help you, give you good advice, that will listen to you, and help you plan and be honest with you, and then find your reason why. Why do you want to reach a specific dream? Because if you have a strong why, nothing is going to it's going to be very, very difficult for you not to reach that dream, because you have a strong why and a strong reason why. All right, so now we're talking about my whys, me coming from an immigrant background, growing up in between different cultures. So growing up between different cultures, the American culture, the Latino culture, what are some of the advantages? What are some of the disadvantages of that? As you all probably already know, we have a lot of advantages being bicultural. We know more than one language. We're able to move between different worlds. it's a lot of fun sharing our culture with other people, and that makes it very open for other people to share their culture with us. And so we learn about different cultures. We are able to move around different worlds, get along with a lot of people. Um, and then it also allows us an escape from the professional world. I don't know about you guys, but for me, when school got stressful, um, for me, dancing is amazing. And Latinos, we have amazing music, so it's very upbeat, so it's a good stress reliever. And then when I was too tired to go dancing, we still have the Spanish telenovelas, which is full of drama and very entertaining. So it gave me an escape from the professional world, and then help us connect, build deeper connections between people, because it doesn't matter what culture you're from. When you're between cultures, we all share the challenges and advantages moving between the American and then our own native cultures, which is amazing. But despite of all these amazing advantages, there are also a lot of disadvantages. A lot of the times, if we're first generation, or we are actually come from a different country, we don't always know the rules about things, the processes to do things. There's a lot of different, American culture can be very different. Certain things that, for example, my Hispanic culture, that are totally acceptable socially, professionally, and everything may not necessarily be appropriate in the American culture. So you have to learn the different rules that you don't learn at home. You have to learn learning two languages, how to read and write them. And, that can be challenging too, depending on, how exposed you are to each of the languages. And it also, because I didn't know a lot of the things, it also made my journey longer. I have 2 masters. I have those masters not because of choice, it's because I needed it to boost my GPA to get into medical school. I needed it to boost my application, so I could get papers published and everything to be able to get into medical school. So it did make my journey a lot longer. And then also in the Hispanic, at least in my family, ADHD doesn't exist. So I remember when I told my mom I was getting tested, she was like, "Oh, no, 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 no. ADHD? What? You don't have ADHD. You're very smart. It's non-existent." But it was a problem. And so some of those cultural biases could have made it that I got diagnosed a lot later. Maybe I would have gone diagnosed a lot earlier had grown up in a different culture. So little things like that are some of the disadvantages. Big takeaway is coming from a different culture, being bicultural, is learning what your disadvantages are, learning what your advantages are, and then figuring out how to overcome the disadvantages, and then knowing how to use your advantages. Because your advantages, it can boost your application. It can make you be a more candidates, like some more desirable candidates. So it's really important to know how to use, and even your disadvantages, if you word them correctly, if you learn how to work around them, it can also turn into an advantage. So just learning and being very aware of that does help when it comes to growing biculturally or being between 2 cultures. And then being between 2 cultures, I was exposed to what it means to go to the grocery store and know you trying to eat healthy, or coming from an immigrant community. I grew up in a low-income environment, so I was exposed to some of the disadvantages or some of the challenges immigrants face, or low-income families face. I remember going to the grocery store and having to choose between strawberries and apples because we couldn't afford to buy both, trying to eat healthy. So, little things like that, or having to work multiple jobs and not being able to take off to go to the doctor's office, or having to choose between having fun or working an extra shift because you needed the money. And so all of these experiences, and seeing how I had family members and family friends who would have to go back to the home country to go get healthcare because it was too expensive for them here, or hearing about people they didn't really understand what was going on with their health or their body because they couldn't understand their doctors. So this made it, growing up and being exposed to this, along with my curiosity of how the human body worked, made it so that I wanted to work with these communities. I wanted to work with low-income communities. I can actually sit down and relate to them. I've gone through some of the challenges they've gone through. And then when it comes to immigrant communities, I know how hard it is to, I'm aware and I understand how awful it might be to not be able to fully understand your doctor, or having to maneuver the healthcare system in a language that's not your own. and the importance of having someone who speaks your language, who knows your culture. Um, and so that's why I wanted to work with low-income communities, and then more specifically Hispanic communities, but anyone. Um, so I do speak Spanish with my patients. Sometimes I speak in English. Sometimes I speak in Spanglish. It's basically whatever is more, whatever makes my patient more comfortable and whatever helps them understand the most. So sometimes when seeing a patient, a certain expression that would help the patient understand more what's going on with them, or they say a certain expression, I may not remember how to say the words in English at that time. So we say it in Spanish or vice versa. So it's really nice to be able to talk to my patients in any language between English and Spanish. And then being bicultural also improves patient care. Like I said earlier, you are able to understand patients, some of the obstacles that they face. And then when you give them advice, for example, I work in family medicine. So I do work with a lot of, I do help people talk about diabetes and hypertension and telling people to eat healthy and telling people, oh, you should eat more kale and exercise. Is really, not everybody knows what kale is. So I can be like, oh, the carne asadas, instead of doing only beef, how about just put some chicken and throw some corn and some plátanos. That plátano asado tastes really good. And that corn with some salt and lemon, delicious. So it's like things where I can help my patients how to eat more healthy while using their own culture and knowing what foods they are available to them, what they know how to use, what they can afford, and then being aware that some neighborhoods are not safe to walk outside. So tailoring advice towards that. And I think that's one of my favorite things, and one of the reasons why I want to work with underserved communities. And a big takeaway I heard a lot of you guys are interested in healthcare services, is use your experiences to be able to connect with your patients. Show them that you understand where they're coming from, and that you don't come from a judgmental aspect, that you really want to work with them. And then by using your experiences, they see that you really care, and it can be it's a form of like motivational interviewing. It can be so that they're more likely to be successful in their journey of being more healthy. And would like to know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much. Your remarks were so interesting and so helpful, I am sure, to our students. I do have some questions from our students, and as I mentioned before, they unfortunately don't have a microphone, so I will read some of these questions to you, okay? The first question is from our student, Maddie. Maddie, if you're out there, can you wave so that Dr. Baker can see you? I don't know if you can see all the different faces. Does Maddie have her camera on? Maddie is originally from Guatemala, so she was particularly excited about talking with you. So her question is, what study habits did you adopt in order to achieve your dream of becoming a community doctor, and what sacrifices did you make to reach your dream?
Okay, so there's a lot of study habits. So first of all is most important thing about when you have a dream is surrounding yourself by people that will encourage you and support you, and that you guys will work together as a group to reach your desired goals. And so getting a study community, a group of people that you study, that you will be there for the goods and the bads. Always making sure there's a couple people that are doing really well in school so that you can learn to study from them. And then so you can learn their good study habits, but people that will, sit down with you when you're having a bad day and you can't figure out how you're studying so hard, so not passing an exam, that will help you with it. So study community is really important. And then second of all, it's finding optimal study environments. So for some people, it's at home, some people it's at coffee shops, some people it's at a friend's house, but finding the ideal location for you. For example, if you prefer to study at home, have a dedicated area of your house that is just for books for you to study with all of your necessary supplies, so that you are able to be at home and not feel like you're always studying. And if you're in that area, you get into study mode. Or if you like to study at coffee shops or at school or other places, is having your bag with all the supplies that you need, and therefore you're not running around and not needing everything. And then if your supplies is just a laptop or a notebook and pen, whatever it may be, just always having it compact in your study area or your portable bag, depending on how you study. And then figuring out your learning style and sticking to it. So there's a lot of different learning styles. Some people learn by listening, some people learn by writing, some people learn by combination of writing and listening, some people learn by drawing. Is figuring out how you learn the best and fastest, and sticking to it. And then once you find out how you learn the best, whether it's like listening via writing notes, researching into some of the different styles, and different methods available to see which one works the best for you. And then quiz yourself. My board scores and exam scores definitely went up a lot when I started quizzing myself. It's hard. It's really disheartening when you're getting every single question wrong, but it's okay to get every single question wrong while you're quizzing yourself at home or doing practice questions at home, as long as you learn from it. So what I usually do is when I would do practice questions, or if you're using flashcards, if you get something wrong, write it down and write down why you got it wrong. And then I would make a list of, let's just say I did 20 questions and I got 10 of them wrong. And so I would write a line, okay, I got this question wrong because of this. This is the key point that I didn't know or didn't remember. Or some of the ones, sometimes you get really lucky, you guess correctly. And so I write down, oh, I got this right because this is what they wanted me to know. And then at the end of the week, or I would kind of read over my list. And so I would keep reviewing that list. And so the things that I didn't know, I remembered. And after a while, I started learning patterns of the questions. And so when you got to board exams, sometimes you had no idea what the answer was, but you had done so many and you had taken the time to remember the little fact that helped me get the question that I should have known. So I would have gotten the question correct during my practice tests or practice questions, so that when it came to actual tests, it really did help. Same with flashcards, repetition and quizzing yourself is a key to getting higher test scores, as much as hard as it is when you get everything wrong. And then sacrifices. Well, you guys are all students, so sometimes you have to choose to study when other people are having fun because you have a test coming up. Sometimes I had to work, so I could afford to go to school. So this and then that can affect relationships, and sometimes you'll be with people who don't have the same mindset as you, and it's very disheartening, but it can cause you to grow apart with some of your friends, and it's okay, because other people who have your same mindset will be, you'll surround yourself with people with similar mindsets, but sometimes that can be very difficult. I did move away from my family. I'm a 6-hour flight from Maryland, so that's not always fun. I miss a lot of family events. My brother just had a daughter. I missed her birth. The first one, he has 2 daughters. I missed both of their births. I miss all the birthday parties, sometimes holidays with family, and it sucks. But that's where I came to school in California, and that was my opportunity. And I wouldn't have changed it. It's just some of the sacrifices. And then my youth, I spent a lot of time studying in the library, at coffee shops, instead of, traveling. And then financial, I do owe a lot in student loans, and that's a very big burden. So those are some of the sacrifices.
What a very helpful response, especially about the kinds of study habits that one needs to adopt. I think that was extremely helpful. Thank you so much. And I see Maddie wrote thank you in the chat as well. The next question I have is from my student Wenso, who's from Burkina Faso. She says, her question is, have you ever been stereotyped during your education or your career because of your immigrant background?
Yes. So I was born here, but being Latina, I have been stereotyped before. Like during my whole journey, I had to learn to adapt to the culture of my supervisors and be aware of how some of my cultural tendencies are perceived, to avoid conflict. For example, certain accessories that are culturally inappropriate in my culture are not always deemed as professional attire. For example, my hoop earrings, that can not, they can be perceived as too big or not the most professional, but in certain hairstyles and stuff like that. And then also some my patterns of speech, speed of speech is not always appropriate, or sometimes it can be misinterpreted. Spanish is a very fast and passionate language, and I sometimes do put it into the English language, and that's not always perceived very good. Um, so yeah, there's always some of those things that you'll always have an encounter. It's just learning how to move around them, um, and know that's part of the process. Now in the it's just part of it.
Thank you. That was a great response. Great examples. Our next question is from Tanya. Tanya's originally from Russia and also grew up in Uzbekistan. Her question is, how old were you when you decided to become a doctor? Were you concerned that at a certain age you would no longer be able to achieve your dream?
So I don't remember how old I was. I was a very little girl. Um, when I was around 4 or 5 years old, my dad was a janitor at a research facility. And so sometimes he would bring old anatomy textbooks. And one time he brought like anatomy, like the little dolls with all the organs in it. And so I was always very curious of how the human body looked. And my mom would buy me books that showed me how our muscles looked and our vessels looked. So I was around 5 or 6 when I was very started to become interested in the human body and how it worked and how it looked like inside. And then as I was growing up, and I was the eldest, I was very aware of a lot of social and economic factors around me and different things, and when it comes to health. But I know by sixth or seventh grade, I remember talking to my best friend at the time, how we were both going to be doctors. We had picked our medical school, which was the one I went to. Um, we were like, yeah, we're going to go to Loma Linda Medical School, and she was going to specialize in something and I was going to specialize in something. And this was in middle school. So definitely by then it was well established. And I was never really concerned about whether or not I was, okay, growing up, I was never really concerned about whether I was going to become a doctor. Um, because I've been wanting to be a doctor for so long, my family and people around me were always saying I was the future doctor. Um, and so it was very encouraged throughout my life, throughout my childhood. When I was in college, me becoming a doctor became a very, like, the chances of me never becoming a doctor was a very good possibility. And so there were times that were scary. And I doubted that it was ever going to happen for me. Um, but because of how I was raised, I was going to be a future doctor. For me, I never fully believed that was never going to happen until every single door was closed. So I was very determined to figure out a way how.
And when you mentioned earlier that you had to get a second master's degree, did you ever feel at a certain point like, gosh, I am getting older. I don't know if I can keep doing this? And if you thought that, how did you keep going?
I did. And that's where my why came into play. Because not only did I have to get 2 masters to get into medical school, I also repeated a year of medical school. And for me, that was the hardest year, where we do a lot of the studying, take boards after that. So that was when I did my second year, the first time around. Towards the end of it, I wanted to give up. I really considered um, quitting school. My husband, who was then my boyfriend at the time, helped me a lot. And I watched a documentary about one of the clinics, community clinics in the East Coast, and how they worked with immigrant communities. And I was like, well, this is my why. This is my reason why. I want to do this someday. And if I quit, I'm never going to be able to be one of those doctors. And so remembering that. And so every time afterwards where, I got really close to quitting, I just remembered, I'm like, why am I doing this? And so that gave me enough strength to push through. But yes, I did consider quitting a couple times.
It's interesting. This is a question coming in from my co-teacher, and I think educators are very interested in this idea of motivation. Intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. We get our families perhaps or partners to help support us. But how are you able to develop that intrinsic motivation within yourself? And you mentioned earlier your religious community and your faith. Is that part of that does that connect to your intrinsic motivation?
Yes, because in a way, yes, because I know that So one of the things I did promise God from a young age is I wanted to serve Him, and then I was like, I would like to serve you in a way in the healthcare. I want to be able to take care of people as a doctor. And so I did dedicate my career to serving Him and serving others. And so I figured if this is what God had in plan for me, it was going to happen. But I also understood that it may not necessarily what He had in plan for me. And so I had to be open enough to finding a different route or doing a different career. So it's just a combination of surrounding yourself by people that tell you can, and having a belief. And for those of you guys have a belief in a higher power, is trusting that higher power. And if you don't, um, having a good reason to why you have to push towards it. And I think is a combination of all of that, the people around me, because I had a lot of people that believed in me. And what I tell my friends sometimes is sometimes you can't believe in yourself. So you have to allow somebody else to believe for you. And if that person, if there's still people believing in you, there's no reason for you not to believe in yourself. And sometimes you're not strong enough to believe in yourself. So you just have to trust the judgment of the people around you. And that does help a lot.
I love what you said about finding the why. I think that's very interesting. Here's another question that relates actually to the learning community class that Professor Lott and I teach. And so we read essays from this book, American Like Me, which is edited by America Ferrera, and it's essays by well-known actors and comedians and writers and musicians, people like Lin-Manuel Miranda, Linda Sarsour, Padma Lakshmi, Kumail Nanjiani, Ravi Patel, people who have achieved great success, who come from immigrant backgrounds. Either they immigrated here or their parents did, so first or second generation Americans, who had to overcome a lot of obstacles and also live in between cultures to achieve their goals. So the question is, and I'm going to read this from Professor Lott in the chat. It's very small for me to read this. Let's see. It says, okay. Some of the writers or children of immigrants that we have read this semester mention how they do not feel 100% American or 100% part of their country of origin. So this idea of being between. We're also reading the book, the novel, The Namesake. The author, Jhumpa Lahiri, notes, for example, that she never felt American enough in the US, nor did she feel Indian enough in India. Have you ever had similar feelings?
Yes. In Guatemala, when in Guatemala, I've never felt like I was never truly part of the culture, but I did spend a lot of summers there. And when we spent the summers there, they would enroll us in school. And I also did a whole year in boarding school during high school there. So I was always with people my age. And so I did learn a lot of the sayings and did a lot of the things. So it wasn't as, I didn't sense it that much as much in Guatemala, but here, yes, for sure. And then here amongst other Central American Latinos, I don't always feel like I belong. I don't always feel like I fully belong in either the American culture or the Hispanic culture here in the United States. And that is one of the things that has been one of the bigger struggles is I don't always feel like I don't always feel like part of the culture. And so I'm kind of like always in between. And so I usually am kind of like, but it also, it's a blessing because of that, I've gotten to know a lot of different people that I wouldn't have otherwise got to know and build relationships with if I felt comfortable in either one or the other cultures.
Great response. Thank you so much. That was very insightful and very, I think, relevant to our students. Thank you. I have a few other questions, and please, I invite everyone out there in Zoom land to type more questions in the chat. We still have some time left, so you're welcome to go ahead and put those in the chat. My next question is from Michelle. She said, what were the particular challenges you faced in order to become a community doctor. And I think, if I remember correctly, several of our students were interested in what it means to be a community doctor. Can you explain that more to our students?
Okay, so there's different, this is still something I'm trying to figure out. So we have, from my understanding, community doctor is just a doctor that kind of like is, so it's like family medicine or primary care, where we are aware of the community around us and we try to participate in the community, and be aware of the different issues and different things that are important for them, and then advocate for them. For example, here in LA, when something that happened, give me a second. It's just being part of it's being part of your patient population, knowing the different issues in the community, advocating for those issues, whether it's through legislation or through protests, and being aware and participating in those things, or even organizing things sometimes, to make sure that what your patient's needs are met, whether it is, you know, having access to healthier food, having a grocery store in their neighborhood, stuff like that, or safe park. So it's being aware of the community of those issues, and then going out into the community and getting to know what your patient's experiences are. That's my understanding of it, and that's how I view it. I don't know how other people view it.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Another student asked about the process of becoming a doctor, what it means to be a resident, what it means to be an intern. How do you decide on your specialty? Can you tell us more about the stages in the process?
Okay, so the process is you do 4 years of undergrad, and you don't have to do biology or chemistry major. You can be an English major. I think a couple people did. I definitely know people who were English majors, but you do have to do certain set of requirements, and then you have to take the MCAT. And the MCAT is a test that, depending on, so it's really important to keep your science and math classes, try to get A's and B's in those classes, so you can have a high science GPA and then a good MCAT score. And so this is where, if you are planning to do medicine, I would definitely, figure out now whether or not you have any learning disabilities, how you learn best, how you increase your test scores the best in undergrad, so that you can use that for the MCAT. And then while you're in undergrad, it's really important to get along well with your science teachers, your biology teacher, especially if they do research. And then if they do research, reading up about the research and asking if they have space in the lab for you, or reading about the different professors in the school that you're going to, and seeing what research they do. If there's something that interests you, see if there's a position in the lab. So doing research experience or doing community service are some things that they look for in the application. So yeah, work experiences, community service experience, especially hospital or scribing, that can be both, and then research, to make you a well-rounded candidate. Try to have a better GPA, but just because you have a low GPA doesn't mean you won't be a doctor. And I can attest to that. And then you go to medical school. Medical school is 4 years. The first 2 years are more of the book years. So you go through all of the systems, you do all of your basic sciences, and then all the basic pathologies. And then at the end of your second year, you take your first board exam. And the first board exam is very important because it does kind of, well, right now it's changing. And so I think it's more pass or fail. So it's not but when I was going through medical school, it kind of gave you an idea of what specialties were available for you. And then during your third year, you rotate through all of the different specialties. And then at the end, and then that's where you kind of figure out which specialty is for you. Some people go knowing what specialty they wanted. Some people were like, oh yeah, I scribed in the ED during undergrad. I want to be an ED doctor. And that's what they're doing. Other people don't. Like, I thought I was going to be a surgeon, but then I also wanted to be a community doctor. And so what I thought I wanted versus what I really, really wanted, and who I am, what field fits for me, was totally different, and they were clashing. And then once I did my family medicine rotation, I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. So sometimes you know before, sometimes you discover, and sometimes you just can't. So for everyone, it's very different picking your specialty. And then in your fourth year is when you apply for residency. So between third year and fourth year, you do your second board exam. Now it's pass or fail. And then also during those 3 years of medical school, you're expected to do join clubs and be participant and try to find things to boost your application. And then you do during fourth year, you apply. So right now, the applications were submitted in October, no, September. And then right now people are interviewing right now during fourth year. And then in March is a big day called match day, where you find out where where you match, because for residency, you apply and then everybody decides where you want to get it. The programs decide if they want to interview you, you interview with them. And then at the end of the day, you put a list, you rank them from scale of, you're like, this is my top choice, second choice, third choice, and do the same thing with candidates. And the computer matches you up. So you really don't know where you're going to end up with until match day. And then after match day, some people have rotations to do, some don't. It depends on individual schools. And then you graduate and then you start residency. So residency can range between 3 to 5 years, depending on the specialty. Family medicine is 3 years. And then the first year residency is called your intern year. So right now I'm a resident, but I'm the intern. Next year I'll be just a resident. I'll be a second year resident. So interns, resident is the same thing. Intern is just a word used for the first year. And then afterwards, after your residency, which is 3 to 5 years, you can choose to do a fellowship or not to do a fellowship. And the fellowships are important to specialize. For example, I'm deciding, I'm considering doing an OB fellowship. Basically what that means is that as family medicine doctor, I'll be able to take care of, I'll be able to do C-sections, which is not something you can do just from a family medicine residency. So it just adds certain skills and certain things you can do. Or if you want to be a cardiologist, you do an internal medicine residency for 3 years, and then a cardiology fellowship, which I think is about 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
It takes a lot of commitment. It's a long journey. Very impressive. Thank you for explaining that to us. I have another question coming in. What are some health disparities that you notice in low-income communities or immigrant populations?
Health disparities. Well, a lot of people have to work multiple jobs. And so even if there's a doctor available, you don't always have the time to go to the doctor. Or there's things like food deserts, where some neighborhoods don't have grocery stores with fresh fruits and vegetables, or the quality of the fresh fruits and vegetables isn't the best, or people can't afford fresh fruits and vegetables. And so them eating junk food is all they can really do. And it's really sad because, when you have high blood pressure, diabetes, you are supposed to eat foods low in salt or not processed foods and lots of fruits and vegetables. Another thing is exercising. Some neighborhoods are not safe enough for you to walk outside in. In some neighborhoods, you're standing in front of your yard and you get shot just because somebody drove by and decided to shoot a gun. And that's really sad. So you have to be really aware. And those are just some of them. Some people can't afford their medications, and they want us to write prescription for over-the-counter medications like Miralax, or things that you can just go to the Target and just buy, because if it's prescribed, then the insurance will they may not have to pay for it. Things like that. Or sometimes is the best medication, like some of the best medications for heart failure, the best one, last I checked, was like $500 a month. Who can pay $500 for medication? And so sometimes we have to use different medications and not the best one, not because we have to figure out, okay, if I prescribe this medication, will the patient take it? No, they can't afford it. Are there any ways we can get this cheaper for them? No, we can try and do our best, but sometimes you just have to find out what's the best combination that is affordable. So it's just little things like that are some disparities.
Those are great specific examples. Thank you. I have a question here from Fennet. Hello, Fennet. Um, she says, I'm planning to pursue the health science field. How are you able to balance school, class, and work life? What are some tips you can share that helped you to become successful in the present day?
Okay. So it's coming up with a plan. So definitely, um, this is your end goal, and then break up the different steps. For example, what are you planning on studying for?
To become a pediatric nurse.
Pediatric nurse. Okay, so your steps are doing all the pre-nursing requirements, and then enrolling into nursing school, and then after nursing school, passing the NCLEX, and then from there, I think you have to have certain. If I remember correctly from my sister, you can't. It's very hard to graduate and then be a pediatric nurse. So you have to get certain experiences in order to be able to work with children. Correct? If that's my understanding. So what you do is pediatric nurse is your end goal. First is pre-nursing requirements, then nursing school, then the NCLEX, and then what experiences you need to get to the pediatric nurse. And then, all right, so those are your main goal, and then your baby steps. And then from there, breaking apart, what do you need to do to get all your nursing requirements? What are the nursing requirements? Make the list. All right, so what do nursing schools look for in an applicant? Make sure you have all of those things. And then kind of like little check boxes. And then in order to achieve each of those goals, break into smaller little things. All right. So for nursing school, you have to take biology. All right. So which class? Awesome. And then depending on how you are with, you put a checkbox after biology. You may need to break it into smaller little baby steps, but like little mini goals. And then balancing life, work, and school is always, it's really important to always set some time aside for yourself. So when I was in UMBC in graduate school, some of the things I would do is I was a graduate student. I worked in a lab. I trained students. Plus I also worked as a server. And so I had to find time where it was my time. And for me, dancing is where I find rejuvenation. So every Thursday night was my night to go dancing. So whether I worked or not, we would go out with my coworkers and we would go dancing. And yes, the price of that was being very tired on Friday, but I felt so refreshed. So finding what refreshes you. Another thing for me that refreshes me is good coffee or free coffee. And so when I'm having a really bad day and I don't have time to do something for myself, that one good cup of coffee, I might go treat myself to coffee, or my husband will make me extra special coffee. And that's how I take care of myself, is finding ways to take care of yourself that are 10-minute things, 5-minute things, an hour, an afternoon. So depending on how much time you have, you always do something for self-care. And then having a schedule. So mapping out when are you taking your classes, when are you going to work, and then communicating with your bosses what your schedules are and what you're trying to do.
Wow, important advice for all of us. Thank you. Breaking it into smaller pieces and finding time for self-care. That's great. Thank you. I have a question from Jean-Claude. He says, this is a great question. When I think about being a doctor, I see myself as a person who wouldn't have time for my family. Should this be an issue and make me think of quitting?
Well, there's different specialties and there's different views about life. And so you just have to figure out what are your priorities. And then from there, that may mean not working as many shifts. That may mean not getting paid as much. But for example, I chose family medicine because one of the things I love about family medicine is that I want to work as a clinician, which means I'm Monday through Friday. So that means I have the weekends and holidays off with my family. I know other OB-GYN surgeons who only work 3 or 4 days a week, and they're surgeons. So it's just really finding a balance between, you may have to work less hours, but you have to balance your career with family and figuring out what is your priority. And then from there, talk to different people from that specialty and see how they manage life-work balance. And what are some of the things they do? and then try to kind of like cater your career to that pattern. It is possible, even with surgeons. It's a matter of choice, um, of what you want to prioritize.
That's great advice. Thank you. And I think that gives a lot of students hope that it's possible to have a family life and a challenging, demanding, but rewarding career.
Mhm.
Um, Another question coming here, and there's so many questions coming in, so let me just see if I can scroll through and find it again here. What is some specific advice you can give to someone who has trouble, who has a learning disability, especially ADHD? What do you do to cope with that?
Okay, so ADHD is perfectly manageable. A lot of people who are doctors have ADHD. So the important thing is to be aware that you have it and then build good habits. You don't need the medications to be successful. Um, I have a friend who didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until residency. So you can graduate from medical school and never have it be diagnosed. I got it diagnosed. I passed 1 year of medical school without being diagnosed. Important thing is sleep is really important. Eating healthy is really important. Having an agenda and kind of really knowing how to structure your time. And then this is where having your bag or your area for studying and really knowing your study environment is really important. For example, when I study at home, I have all of my things around me and I have my study area. I set up a study area with all of my supplies so I wouldn't be walking around and getting distracted. And then with my study partners, I had a card where when they came to my house or when we would go to coffee shops, it said do not disturb because I wanted to talk all the time. And so I knew if they had their card saying do not disturb, I was not allowed to talk to them. And then when they were okay with me having a break, they would flip it to break, timing the breaks. And then definitely figuring out, for me, I did use Adderall to study. It was the medication I got prescribed to pass board exam. When I do board exams, when I take exams, I do study. A lot of schools do give you extra time for tests when you have ADHD, so taking advantage of that. The only thing is board exams don't. So you do have to still practice with the timing and figuring out how you test better when you don't have the extra time on exams. But yeah, definitely good sleep, healthy eating, having your study area or study bag with everything that you need, having a good agenda, and knowing what are your distractions to keep them away from you is very important. But it is possible.
Thank you. And we're getting lots of thank you notes in the chat too. I don't know if you're saying this, saying thank you so much for your responses. The next question is, let me find it here. Where did it go? What are 2 or 3 important pieces of advice for MC students who are non-native speakers of English to succeed at completing a degree?
Non-native speakers of English at MC. Give me a second. Let me think of this one.
It's very specific, but that's the population of students in the ELAB program. Of course, many students from ELAB go on to different majors within the college. And I know that you were raised bilingual, so you have this experience of being able to speak 2 languages. As a bilingual person, I could also rephrase it. Do you have any advice for students that would be particularly helpful?
Well, so I went to people with medical school which English was their second language. So I'm trying to think of what some of the things they did. One of the things is it might take longer for you to study, and there might be a lot of words you don't understand. I would definitely look up when you don't understand terms, when you don't know what the words mean, look it up. Depending on how much time you have, write it down, or you just always get into habit of looking up words that you don't understand. Another thing is, okay, that's one thing I would do. and this is with anybody. If you don't know what something means, looking it up helps. And then two is don't get discouraged. Just because English is your second language doesn't mean um, you're not able to study or finish a degree. It might take you a little bit longer, and just being aware of what are some of the things that you need to improve and what are some of the things you struggle with in the English language and working on improving them. For example, if you struggle reading in English, try figuring out, go to talk to somebody about how to you get faster at reading. There are courses that teach you how to read faster in English and understand English, reading faster or looking things up. So figuring out what are your weaknesses that you need to work on and work on those so that with time they're less and less of a problem. But I did have friends where English was their second language. They would always be like, oh, this is not my language. Oh, what is it? How you say? And sometimes they would have to describe things, saying things, and this is in a social environment. And then, now they're doctors. So you are able to get a degree despite it being your second language.
So even though it may take some extra time and determination to overcome those obstacles, it sounds completely feasible. Look up those words you don't know, ask for help, budget your time. That's great advice for our students. Thank you so much. We are getting close to the end of our time, so I just want to ask, is anyone out there in the audience, if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, if you have a microphone, I will look through. You're welcome to ask a question now if you'd like to, and let me just go through the chat and make sure that I had a chance to read everyone's questions. I'm going to see if there's any other ones coming in. Any last questions? Just give 1 minute to let people type them in case they have one. I also wanted to add, I'm not sure if we mentioned this earlier, that your sister also went to Montgomery College, and I believe she now is a nurse practitioner. Is that
Oh, no,
correct?
she's a nurse.
She's a nurse. Great. Can you tell us a little bit about her experience at MC and what she's doing now?
So I know she started MC and did a couple courses there. She eventually ended up going to Shady Grove, University of Maryland, Shady Grove, nursing school. So right now, she is an ICU nurse. I don't know which hospital, and then she works as a trauma nurse. I know one of the hospitals she works is in Shady Grove, from my understanding. Mm-hmm. So she's been practicing for a few years, and she really loves acute care and all that kind of stuff.
Your mom must be very proud. All right, I have a question. I'm not sure if this refers to something that you said earlier. The NCLEX, is this a?
Oh, the NCLEX. Okay.
NCLEX? Yeah.
So when you study nursing, once you graduate from nursing, it's a board exam you have to pass in order to practice and get your license. Because when you graduate from nursing school, you don't get your license immediately. You take the NCLEX, and then once you pass it, you have to go to your state board and apply for nursing license.
Wow, lots and lots of tests to make sure that our nurses and doctors are very qualified. Okay, thank you so much for answering that question.
Of course.
Here's another one. Did you have any scholarships that helped you fund your education?
So coming from immigrant background, I didn't really know what all the scholarships were available. Sometimes I got a couple $1,000 here and there, but for the most part, no. So most of my education was funded. Undergrad education I paid for from working. I had a lot of help, and when it came to that, but it was all via working, and then graduate school and medical school was all loans. I did work during a period during grad school and medical school, and so that kind of helped with some of my living expenses.
Do community doctors ever have opportunities for loan forgiveness if they're working in low-income communities?
Yes, there is something called loan forgiveness programs. If you work with underserved communities, or it's like, this is not just for doctors, this is for nurses, for basically, I think it's any healthcare fields, definitely teachers, which has been a recent scandal where they weren't really, after 10 years, you do public service loans, where you work with public service for 10 years and then your loans are forgiven, that is, those are available, but you do have to be aware that at the end of those 10 years, you are taxed for all the money that's forgiven. So you do have to have my loans are a lot. So for me, that would still be a very big bill. Just something to be aware of. And you may or may not get it. It's not guaranteed. Laws are changing, do change. And so it is a gamble. I'm personally not planning on doing that at this point in time because it's a gamble.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, pros and cons. It sounds a little bit risky. Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions that have come in. Great questions. Thank you, audience, for those. Before we end, I want to say thank you again for your wonderful advice and your insight. It has been very inspiring to listen to you. And, knowing, I think many times when students are on their educational journey, it can seem so daunting, so overwhelming, and it's really wonderful to hear from someone who has achieved her goal. So thank you so much. I'm getting lots of thank yous coming into the chat here. I don't know if you can see them all. Maybe everyone, if you can give a reaction clapping symbol or show her clapping hands to say thank you so much to Dr. Baker for your time today. We really appreciate it. I see more notes coming in. Congratulations, Dr. Baker. You are inspiring us. Thank you so much for your time and for your advice. Many thank yous coming in. So thank you so much, Dr. Baker. We appreciate you, and we will certainly stay in touch.
of course. And then I know some of you guys may want to do other healthcare fields, but for those of you that are interested in medicine, feel free to contact me. Dr. Satram will give you my email, and then we can talk, and then I can give you more tailored advice and, a little more, fill in more of the details.
That is so kind of you to offer. In fact, a few students did ask if they could send follow-up email questions
Yes.
to you. You're so generous to offer that. And yes, I will share that with you. So that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. Is there any last words that you have for us or anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, no, just thank you so much. It means a lot to be here and be able to talk to you guys. So I'm really, really happy. And I hope this helped. And I hope this encouraged you guys to dream big and, push no matter what the obstacle is.
We are so glad to see this Montgomery College success story. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much,
Bye.
Becky. Bye.
Of course. Bye.